He had delivered food to thousands of homes. Small apartments in Brooklyn, crowded dorms near Boston, security booths in downtown Chicago, but never this mansion in Beverly Hills. And never did he expect to see a photo that made his heart stop. A photo from his childhood. A photo he didn't know still existed, hanging on the wall of a billionaire's mansion. And the question that escaped his lips that night would shatter secrets buried for over 25 years. Everyone in that mansion thought it was just another delivery, another tired boy in a red uniform, another name on a receipt, another signature on a screen. No one noticed his trembling hands. No one saw the way his eyes slowly lifted toward the walls, until he spoke. And when he did, everything changed. This is not just a story about money and power. It's a story about identity, about truth, and about how some secrets refuse to stay buried forever. The delivery app buzzed again. Order Duggar 78421. Pickup, Little Italy Bistro, Los Angeles. Drop-off, Kensington Estate, Beverly Hills. Ethan frowned. He zoomed in on the map. The Kensington Estate wasn't a normal address. It was the kind of place people whispered about. High walls, private security, no random visitors. Why would someone order food from an app here? He muttered. But an order was an order. Ethan adjusted the straps of his worn red delivery bag and kicked his bike to life. The night air was cold, the kind that crept through cheap jackets and settled into bones. As he rode uphill, the city slowly changed. Streetlights became decorative lamps. Broken sidewalks turned into smooth stone roads. Noise faded into silence. Finally, the mansion appeared. It didn't look real. Tall iron gates, golden crests, lights glowing softly, like the place was alive. Ethan stopped. For a moment, he considered canceling the order. Wrong address, he thought. This isn't for people like me. But the app timer kept ticking. He took a breath and pressed the intercom. A camera shifted. A voice followed. State your purpose. Delivery, Ethan said quietly. There was a pause. Then the gates opened, slowly, as if the mansion itself was deciding whether to let him in. The courtyard was massive. Fountains whispered. Luxury cars slept under soft lights. The air smelled clean, expensive. Ethan parked his bike carefully, suddenly aware of every scuff on it. A guard approached. You're late, the man said flatly. I came as fast as I could, Ethan replied. The guard scanned him with disinterest. Wait there. Ethan stood near the entrance, holding the food bag tightly. Through the tall glass doors, he could see inside crystal chandeliers, paintings in golden frames, people laughing, dressed in suits and gowns. This wasn't a dinner. This was a gathering. Ethan felt invisible, just another background object, until his eyes drifted to the wall, and his breath caught in his throat. At first, he thought he was mistaken. The frame was large, elegant, spotlit. Inside it was a young woman. She stood beside a child. The child was maybe 6 or 7 years old, curly hair, wide eyes, a shy smile. Ethan stepped closer to the glass. His heart began to pound, because that child was him. He didn't understand. He couldn't. That photo was taken in Boston, in a life long gone, a life his mother never talked about. His fingers trembled. His mouth went dry. How? He whispered. Behind him, the doors opened. Footsteps echoed. A calm, powerful voice spoke. That photo, the man said, was taken a very long time ago. Ethan turned slowly. Standing behind him was Mr. Jonathan Hale, the billionaire, the owner of the mansion, the man whose house held his childhood. And before Ethan could stop himself, the question left his lips. Sir, why is my childhood photo in your mansion? The room seemed to shrink around Ethan. The laughter from the gathering faded into the background, replaced by the heavy, almost tangible silence that followed his question. Why is my childhood photo in your mansion? He had spoken it out loud, yet the words seemed almost surreal even to him. His voice quivered. Every eye in the room subtly turned toward him, though no one dared move. Jonathan Hale stood motionless, tall, imposing, yet calm, his gaze piercing into Ethan, as though he could see every secret he had carried for decades. Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to backtrack, to say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean," but something rooted him in place. A part of him, a deep instinct, told him that the truth had to be asked, no matter the cost. Jonathan's lips didn't move. His eyes softened ever so slightly, betraying the first flicker of recognition. "I see you've found her," he finally said, voice low and deliberate. "Her presence here was not meant for you to know yet." Ethan's throat tightened. "Her?" he whispered. "You mean my mother?" Jonathan nodded once. No explanation, no apology, just the weight of a secret heavy enough to fill the mansion itself. Guests shuffled uneasily. A few cleared their throats. Others froze mid-step, sensing the tension. The gray-suit man whispered to a colleague, "Who is this kid? Why does he even dare?" But Jonathan didn't flinch. All he needed was Ethan standing there, asking the question he had no right to ask, and yet had to. Jonathan moved. Slow, measured steps. Each one echoed on the marble floors. He stopped a few meters away from Ethan. The distance was short, yet the space between them seemed infinite. "You're brave," Jonathan said quietly. "Or foolish. Perhaps a mix of both. Most children of your age wouldn't dare ask a question like this." Ethan clenched his fists. I need to know my mother's story," he said. "Why is her photo here? Who is she to you?" Jonathan exhaled slowly, gaze distant. "Some truths," he said quietly, "are too heavy to reveal too soon. But you were meant to ask this question tonight, and now the time has come." Ethan's heart raced faster than ever. The air in the room seemed heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "Will you show me?" he asked, voice barely audible. Jonathan smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Yes, but be prepared. The truth will change everything you thought you knew." Jonathan led Ethan through a series of hidden doors behind the main hall. The walls were lined with portraits, documents, and artifacts Ethan had never seen before. Each step was heavier than the last. They stopped before a large old trunk, locked, worn, and humming with decades of untold stories. Jonathan turned to Ethan. "What you are about to see is the world your mother protected you from, and the world she never wanted you to know existed until now." Ethan's chest felt tight. Every step into the mansion's secret hallway made him more aware. His life had been anything but ordinary. Jonathan Hale's gaze was steady, calm, yet intense. "Your mother," he began, "was extraordinary, brilliant, brave. She had a mind that could see what others could not, and she changed the course of my life." Ethan's eyes widened. He had always imagined his mother as ordinary. Now he realized she was more than he could imagine. Jonathan continued, "Years ago, before you were born, your mother and I were very close, closer than most people realize. We worked together, dreamed together, loved each other, but circumstances tore her away, and she vanished to protect you from dangerous people." Ethan's hands trembled. Everything he believed about his past was about to be shattered. Jonathan added, "You're about to step into a storm your mother faced alone, but if you survive it, you will understand the love, courage, and sacrifice that shaped your life before you even knew it existed." Ethan followed Jonathan down a hidden hallway behind the mansion. At the end stood a large, old trunk. Inside were letters, photographs, a journal, and artifacts detailing Ethan's mother's life, her brilliance, courage, and the enemies who had forced her to disappear. Ethan opened the journal. The entries revealed secret alliances, dangerous people, and the reason his mother had vanished. A small locket contained a photo of a man, one of the dangerous people who had hunted her. The letters revealed her sacrifices and protections, everything she did to ensure Ethan survived without ever knowing the truth. Jonathan said softly, "You're beginning to see what she protected you from, and soon you will understand why she left, and why she entrusted me to guard these secrets." Ethan's fingers lingered on the journal, tracing the worn leather as if touching it could somehow bridge the gap between his mother's past and his present. Jonathan Hale watched him quietly, giving no further explanation. The silence in the hallway was deafening. Each tick of the grandfather clock at the end of the corridor sounded like a countdown toward revelation. Finally, Jonathan spoke. "There is one part of your mother's story you must see first," he said. "It is not only the reason she disappeared, but the reason your life has been shielded from danger until now." Ethan's heart raced. He had expected stories of childhood, of memories long forgotten. He had not expected danger. What kind of danger?" he asked. Jonathan's gaze darkened. "Some people are willing to destroy anyone who stands in their way. Your mother was one of them." Ethan's mind spun. "Destroy? Who? Why?" Jonathan nodded toward the trunk. "Look inside. Everything you need is there." Ethan dug carefully through the journal and letters until he found a large, sealed envelope. The paper was thick, yellowed with age, with a wax seal stamped with an unfamiliar symbol. He broke the seal. Inside were documents, letters written in coded language, photographs of his mother with unknown men, maps marked with locations across the United States, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and even small towns in Arizona and Texas. At the bottom of the stack was a single folded letter addressed to him. Hands trembling, he opened it. "My dearest Ethan, if you are reading this, then you have already begun to understand the truth. There are people who wish to erase my life and anyone connected to it. You were born into a world far larger and far more dangerous than you can imagine. I had to disappear to ensure your survival. One day, when the time is right, you will meet those who wish to harm you, and only then will you understand why I could not stay. Always remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it." Ethan's stomach churned. Fear, confusion, and disbelief tangled in his mind. His mother had left him, not because she didn't love him, but because staying could have killed him. Jonathan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "There was a man, a powerful figure in the financial world. He considered your mother a threat, someone whose intelligence and influence could undo everything he built. She exposed his secrets, his corruption, his manipulations, and when she did, she became a target. He tried to eliminate her, not physically, not at first. He wanted to erase her influence, erase her identity, and ensure that no one, not even her son, could threaten him." Ethan's hands shook. The world he had known, streets, apartments, deliveries, suddenly felt insignificant compared to the battles fought in shadows. "My mother? She fought him?" he whispered. Jonathan nodded. "Yes, and she was brilliant. She left clues, protections, and warnings, hidden in plain sight, in places only someone as careful as you would discover." Jonathan walked to the far wall and pressed a panel. A section of the corridor shifted open to reveal a hidden room. Inside were monitors, files, and technology Ethan had never imagined. Maps of the United States were pinned with red and blue markers, connected by strings and notes. On a table lay photographs of men and women, some clearly dangerous, others mysterious, all linked to his mother's work. "This," Jonathan said, "is where your mother prepared for every eventuality, every move she made, every step she took. It was calculated to protect you, and now you must understand it, because one day you may face them yourself." Ethan felt the weight of the moment. The walls of the mansion, the chandeliers, the luxury cars, nothing mattered. The only thing that mattered was the hidden war his mother had fought and the legacy of courage she had left behind. Jonathan handed Ethan a folder with his mother's early plans, coded messages, and instructions. "You must do something your mother could not do alone," Jonathan said. "You must prove that you are capable of understanding her choices and ready to protect the truth she fought for." Ethan's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Inside were letters, maps, and a small USB drive. This drive, Jonathan explained, contains information about the first person who tried to harm her and who could still pose a threat to you. Ethan swallowed hard. He had been a delivery boy, a boy who had simply delivered food, a life that felt safe in its simplicity. Now, the entire world his mother had hidden from him was laid bare, and the first challenge was clear. He had to face the enemy, understand their motives, and protect the truth, or risk losing everything. Ethan turned to Jonathan, his voice barely audible. I can do this. I have to do this. For my mother, for myself. Jonathan's eyes softened. You're ready to step into her world, but be warned. Once you enter, nothing will ever be the same. You will see danger, you will face betrayal, and you will discover truths that could shatter you or make you stronger than you ever imagined. Ethan nodded, heart pounding. He was no longer just a delivery boy. He was the heir to a legacy of courage, secrets, and battles fought in silence. And in that moment, he knew one undeniable fact. His life had just changed forever. Ethan sat in the hidden room, staring at the USB drive in his hand. Every second, the weight of what he had just discovered pressed down harder on him. His mother's life, her courage, her sacrifices. It wasn't just history. It was a blueprint for survival, a warning he could not ignore. Jonathan Hale stepped beside him, his expression serious. The first person you need to know about is called Leonard Grayson, he said quietly. He's a businessman, or at least he pretends to be one. But behind the public image lies someone ruthless, cunning, dangerous. Your mother nearly exposed him years ago, and he has never forgotten it. Ethan's pulse quickened. Dangerous how? He asked. Jonathan leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Ethan could hear. He has resources, people who obey him without question. He eliminates threats quietly, leaving no trace, and he wants to erase anyone connected to your mother's work, including you. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. He had never faced real danger before. His life had been ordinary. Deliveries, school, small apartments. Now, he was being asked to step into a world of secrets, lies, and threats that could cost him his life. Jonathan handed him a folder. Inside were documents, Grayson's business connections, travel plans, locations, and a photo of him at a gala in New York. You need to study this carefully, Jonathan said. Your mother left clues. She always thought someone would have to continue her work, that someone is you now. Ethan nodded, determination burning in his eyes. He may have been a delivery boy yesterday, but today he was stepping into a world his mother had fought to protect him from. Hours passed as Ethan pored over the documents. Maps marked in red and blue showed Grayson's movements across the country. New York offices, Chicago safe houses, Los Angeles gala venues. A pattern began to emerge. Grayson had enemies too, but unlike his mother, Ethan realized he had no allies. Then he saw it, a location marked in bold letters, downtown Los Angeles. It was the first place Grayson would appear publicly after months of hiding. Ethan's hands shook. This is it, he whispered. If I'm going to understand my mother's world, I need to see this. Jonathan placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Remember what I said. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. Your mother understood this. Now it's your turn. The night was cold, the streets of Los Angeles unusually quiet. Ethan rode his bike toward the location Jonathan had indicated. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound echoed like a warning. He arrived at a sleek office building, the kind reserved for people with influence, power, and secrets. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit. Security cameras scanned every corner. Guards moved with precision. Ethan swallowed his fear. He remembered his mother's words. Trust your instincts. Protect the truth. Be brave. He slipped into a stairwell, careful not to be seen, and ascended to the floor where Grayson was expected. Every step felt heavier, as though the weight of history itself pressed down on him. Ethan reached the top floor and peeked through a glass window. Inside, a man sat behind a large mahogany desk. Leonard Grayson, tall, sharp-featured, eyes cold as ice. The aura of power and danger was palpable. Ethan's stomach turned. This was the man who had hunted his mother, the man who could destroy him with a single word. Then, suddenly, Grayson looked up. His piercing eyes scanned the room, and for a moment, it felt like they were looking directly at Ethan. Ethan ducked behind a pillar, heart pounding. He realized the first lesson his mother had prepared him for was clear. You cannot underestimate the enemy, ever. He needed a plan, he needed patience, and above all, he needed courage. Ethan watched for hours. He observed Grayson's routines, his body language, the people who came and went. Every detail mattered. Every second could save his life. Finally, as the night deepened, Ethan spotted a vulnerability, a private balcony that Grayson used to make confidential calls, away from the cameras and the staff. Ethan's pulse raced. This was his chance to act, to gather information, to step into the legacy his mother had left him. He had to be smart, he had to be silent, he had to survive. Ethan stepped onto the balcony quietly, careful not to make a sound. Below, Los Angeles sparkled like 1,000 tiny fires. Above, the night sky stretched endless, silent, and watchful. And then he overheard Grayson speak. The first words that would forever change Ethan's understanding of the world his mother had protected him from. If anyone finds out what she did, no one will survive. Not her, not her son, not anyone who dares to defy me. Ethan froze. The enemy knew he existed, and in that moment he realized he was no longer just a boy learning the truth. He was now part of the war itself. Ethan crouched on the balcony, barely breathing. Below him, Leonard Grayson paced slowly, speaking into a phone. The city of Los Angeles shimmered beneath him, oblivious to the danger unfolding above. His pulse thundered in his ears. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave, to vanish. But the words he overheard moments ago repeated in his mind. Not her, not her son, not anyone who dares to defy me. That sentence had changed everything. He was no longer just a boy discovering his past. He was a target. Ethan clutched the USB drive closer. It contained the evidence his mother had gathered, evidence that could destroy Grayson's empire if it got into the right hands. And if Grayson found it first, everything would be gone. Ethan scanned the balcony. He could see a side entrance into Grayson's private office, a narrow door that appeared unguarded. It was risky. One wrong step, one miscalculated breath, and everything could end. He thought of his mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect him, her courage, her meticulous planning, her foresight. It flowed through him now like a silent inheritance. "This is my moment," he whispered under his breath. "For her, for me, for the truth." He took a deep breath and slipped silently along the railing, every muscle tense, every shadow a potential threat. Ethan entered the office quietly. The room smelled of expensive leather, cologne, and subtle fear. Grayson's eyes were still on the phone, his focus unwavering. Ethan crouched behind a desk and pulled the USB drive from his bag. He plugged it into a small, portable laptop he had brought. His mother's instructions had included this, anticipating that he might one day face Grayson himself. Files began to open on the screen. Bank transfers, secret agreements, offshore accounts, documents proving illegal activities. Everything his mother had collected to expose him. Ethan's heart raced. He knew this was only the first step. The rest would be dangerous. Suddenly, a noise echoed from behind the office door. Ethan froze. A shadow moved. "Who's there?" Grayson's voice demanded, now aware of a disturbance. Ethan turned slightly and saw someone stepping from the shadows. A familiar face. It was Michael, a man he had seen in his mother's files as an ally, or so he had thought. Michael's eyes were cold. "No one told me you'd be here, Ethan," he said, a smirk tugging at his lips. "And you really think you can just walk into Grayson's world without paying a price?" Ethan's blood ran cold. Betrayal. The first true betrayal in the war his mother had warned him about. Grayson hung up the phone and turned fully toward Ethan. His eyes narrowed as he noticed the laptop. "You're bold," Grayson said, his tone casual but lethal, too bold, and clearly misled. Ethan clenched his fists. Michael stepped closer, a hint of menace in his posture. "You shouldn't have come here alone," Michael whispered. "Some truths are dangerous. Some truths can kill you." The office felt smaller now, suffocating. Every piece of furniture, every shadow, every object became a potential weapon or trap. Ethan realized that courage wasn't enough. He needed strategy. He needed instincts sharper than the people around him. As Grayson approached, Ethan's fingers flew over the laptop. He began transferring files to a hidden cloud drive, a backup his mother had insisted he prepare. "You can't escape this, boy," Grayson said, voice cold as ice. "But you can make a choice, disappear, or pay the price for your curiosity." Ethan felt fear clawing at his chest, but beneath it, a fire burned. The same fire his mother had carried when she faced Grayson years ago. He turned to Michael. You worked with her. You knew the truth. Why betray me now?" Michael's lips curved into a shadow of a smile. "Because loyalty has limits, kid, and some secrets are worth more than life itself." Ethan's stomach dropped. This was bigger than he imagined. Not only was Grayson a threat, but the people around him, those he thought were allies, could turn against him at any moment. Suddenly, Grayson lunged toward the desk. Ethan grabbed the laptop and ducked, narrowly avoiding the billionaire's hand. Michael moved to intercept him, but Ethan bolted toward the door. Heart racing, lungs burning, adrenaline surging. He ran down the stairwell, racing against time. Every step, every shadow, every heartbeat reminded him he was now fully in his mother's war. As he reached the exit, he paused for a moment to look back. Grayson's office lights glowed like a beacon of danger behind him. Michael's silhouette vanished into the darkness. Ethan knew one truth. He had survived the first test, but the real challenges had only just begun. Outside, the cool Los Angeles night air hit him like a wave. He had files, he had knowledge, but most importantly, he had survived. And somewhere deep in the city, Leonard Grayson was now aware of a boy who could challenge him. A boy who was no longer just Ethan. He was the son of courage, the heir to secrets, and the next player in a dangerous game. And as he rode his bike through the quiet streets, one thought dominated his mind. This is only the beginning. The neon glow of Los Angeles reflected off Ethan's bike helmet as he raced down the empty streets. His chest heaved, lungs burning. Every corner, every alley, every flickering streetlight seemed like a potential trap. Behind him, the mansion and its secrets loomed in his mind. The trunk, the letters, the USB drive that held the weight of his mother's legacy. But now, another, more personal danger gnawed at him. Michael. Ethan had trusted him. He had believed Michael was one of his mother's allies, someone who had dedicated himself to her mission. But Michael's cold eyes in Grayson's office had erased that illusion. "He knew everything," Ethan muttered to himself. "Everything my mother did. And he betrayed me." The betrayal was a knife to his gut. It wasn't just fear. It was shock, disbelief, and the realization that in this world, loyalty was fragile. He clenched his fists, the USB drive shaking in his hand. "All right," he whispered. "If betrayal is part of this, I'll learn fast." Ethan ducked into a quiet cafe for cover. Pulling out the laptop from his delivery bag, he connected the USB drive again. Files scrolled before his eyes. Bank accounts, offshore companies, emails, and encrypted messages. Grayson wasn't just a businessman. He was a puppeteer, manipulating financial markets, politicians, and media outlets to protect himself. And Michael had been his inside man, feeding him information about Ethan's mother, and now about Ethan himself. Ethan realized the stakes. This was no longer about delivering justice. It was about survival. Every choice could be a matter of life or death. Hours passed as he pieced together Grayson's plans. One file stood out, a list of locations where Grayson stored sensitive, illegal evidence. It included locations in New York, Chicago, and even Los Angeles. If Grayson discovered Ethan had the USB drive, he could strike anywhere, anytime. But if Ethan acted, he could expose Grayson's empire, honor his mother's legacy, and protect the truth. It was a decision that would define him: run and survive, or confront danger and risk everything. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to leave. Every memory of his mother's courage pushed him forward. Ethan used Michael's betrayal as a guide. He traced Michael's movements through photos, emails, and financial transactions. Every step revealed a pattern of loyalty to Grayson, a meticulous network of spies and informants. He realized Michael had been watching him from the start. Every delivery he made, every interaction he had, every small choice in his life had been observed. And yet, he discovered one weakness: Michael's arrogance. "He thinks he's untouchable," Ethan whispered. But arrogance is always a weakness. By dawn, Ethan had formulated a plan: exfiltrate critical files from Grayson's network without being detected, expose Michael's betrayal to a trusted source in the city, turning him into a liability, gather evidence that could finally bring Grayson's empire to light. It was audacious, it was dangerous, but it was necessary. He reminded himself of his mother's words: "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act despite it." Later that night, Ethan returned to the mansion. He knew Michael would expect him to flee. Instead, he used the shadows to his advantage, slipping silently through the halls. He found Michael in a secluded study, reviewing documents. Ethan stepped out of the shadows. "I know everything," he said quietly. Michael froze, surprised that Ethan had found him. You're still alive?" he asked, masking panic with a smirk. "Yes," Ethan said firmly, "and I know what you've done. Betrayal has a price." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You think you can threaten me?" he said. "You're just a boy playing with fire." "I'm the son of someone who faced worse than you," Ethan replied, voice steady. "My mother's courage flows through me, and I'm not running anymore." Michael lunged suddenly, trying to grab the USB drive. Ethan dodged, twisting, knocking over a chair in the struggle. The room filled with chaos, papers flying, the sound of metal clashing against furniture. "You don't understand what you're up against," Michael hissed. "I've protected Grayson's secrets for years. One step wrong, and you're finished." Ethan's mind raced. He remembered his mother's meticulous plans. One move, one choice. He had to be precise. He grabbed a hidden folder from the desk, revealing a copy of evidence that Michael didn't know he had discovered. "This is just the beginning," Ethan said. "Your games end now." Michael's face twisted in rage. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ethan's heart pounded. He knew the danger was far from over. But for the first time, he felt a sense of power, purpose, and control. Outside, the city of Los Angeles slept. Inside, the mansion hummed with tension. Ethan and Michael faced each other, enemies locked in a deadly game of wits. And somewhere, Leonard Grayson's empire trembled, unaware that the heir of courage and secrets had begun his fight. Ethan's thoughts were clear. "I am no longer just discovering the past. I am shaping the future." And in that moment, he knew that every danger ahead, every betrayal, every challenge would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The streets of Los Angeles stretched endlessly beneath the night sky, glittering with neon lights and the faint hum of distant traffic. But to Ethan, every street lamp, every alley, every shadow seemed to pulse with danger. Michael had escaped into the night moments ago, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. He could feel the tension coil around him like a living thing. The USB drive was safe, for now, but every step he took carried the weight of decades of secrets and power struggles. Ethan's mind raced. Michael knew he had the drive now. The copy of evidence Ethan had grabbed in the mansion. He couldn't outrun him forever. He opened the small laptop and accessed a live map of the city, a security map he had downloaded from Michael's private networks. Cameras, patrols, and sensors flickered across the screen like eyes watching every move. "There's no room for mistakes," Ethan muttered under his breath. He could already predict Michael's path. Every predictable step, every blind spot, every opportunity, he had studied them all. And yet, he couldn't shake a gnawing fear. Michael was dangerous, resourceful, and unpredictable. As Ethan moved cautiously through the streets, he realized the scope of Grayson's reach. It wasn't just Michael he had to worry about. Grayson's empire sprawled through the city, through banks, corporations, and underground networks. A thought struck Ethan cold. This isn't just about survival. It's about dismantling a system his mother fought against for years. He remembered her words from the journal. The world hides its monsters behind suits, behind smiles, behind power. Never underestimate what hides in plain sight. And now, the monster he had to face was Leonard Grayson, the man orchestrating danger from the shadows, using Michael as his pawn. Ethan turned into a narrow alley, trying to lose Michael, but a glint of movement caught his eye, a figure darting across rooftops, observing him. He froze. Could it be Michael, or one of Grayson's other agents? The figure leapt down onto the street ahead, blocking his path. "You shouldn't have come here, Ethan," a voice hissed. It was Michael. "You've grown bolder than I expected," Michael continued. "Your mother trained you, yes, but she never made you ready for me." Ethan's pulse thundered. "Then I'll learn fast," he replied. "You can't control everything, not anymore." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what you're stepping into. Grayson's plans aren't just about you. They're about erasing anyone who challenges him. And you're next." Michael lunged at him, and Ethan ran, heart hammering. The streets blurred as he dodged garbage cans, leapt over fire hydrants, and ducked into narrow alleys. Every step, every decision felt like a test. Michael followed with precision, moving like a predator. Ethan realized that this was more than a chase. It was a trial, designed to test his instincts, his courage, and his ability to survive under pressure. As they ran through the city, Ethan remembered something from the journal, a hidden safe house in downtown LA his mother had used years ago. It was equipped with surveillance tools, emergency supplies, and encrypted communication networks. If he could reach it, he could regroup, analyze Michael's patterns, and maybe, just maybe, turn the tables. He changed direction abruptly, ducking into a parking garage. Michael hesitated for a split second, and Ethan seized the moment. He sprinted to the back exit, adrenaline surging, lungs burning, and heart pounding in his chest like a drum of war. Ethan reached the safe house just as dawn approached. The building was unassuming from the outside, a forgotten warehouse tucked between larger structures. Inside, however, it was a fortress. Monitors displayed city streets, sensors tracked movement, and encrypted messages scrolled across a terminal. He slumped against a wall, breathing heavily. The chase was over, for now. But he knew Michael wouldn't stop. Grayson's empire wouldn't stop. He opened the USB drive, studying the files again. Among them was a document he had overlooked before, a ledger of Grayson's deepest secrets. detailing financial corruption, illegal arms transfers, and the hidden network of operatives. If he exposed this, it could bring down the entire empire, but it would also make him a prime target. Ethan reached the safe house just as dawn approached. The building was unassuming from the outside, a forgotten warehouse tucked between larger structures. Inside, however, it was a fortress. Monitors displayed city streets, sensors tracked movement, and encrypted messages scrolled across a terminal. He slumped against a wall, breathing heavily. The chase was over, for now. But he knew Michael wouldn't stop. Grayson's empire wouldn't stop. He opened the USB drive, studying the files again. Among them was a document he had overlooked before, a ledger of Grayson's deepest secrets, detailing financial corruption, illegal arms transfers, and the hidden network of operatives. If he exposed this, it could bring down the entire empire, but it would also make him a prime target. As Ethan scrolled through the files, he realized something terrifying. Michael hadn't just been after the drive. He had been trying to teach him a lesson. Grayson wanted Ethan to understand fear, betrayal, and the stakes of stepping into his mother's world. Ethan's stomach twisted. Everything he had experienced, the betrayal, the chase, the danger, was just the beginning. And then another message flashed on one of the monitors. "Ethan, if you value your life, meet me at the pier at midnight, alone." It was from an anonymous source. A trap, a test, or a warning? Ethan didn't know. But one thing was certain. The real war was about to begin. Outside, Los Angeles gleamed under the early morning sun, unaware of the battle raging in its shadows. Ethan clenched the USB drive, feeling the weight of his mother's legacy pressing down on him. Michael's betrayal, Grayson's empire, and the dangers ahead were no longer just mysteries. They were a storm he had to survive. And as he prepared to leave the safe house, he whispered to himself, "I will not run. I will not hide. I will fight." Because now, it wasn't just about discovery. It was about survival, justice, and taking his mother's legacy into his own hands. The pier stretched into the darkness like a finger pointing toward the unknown. The waves lapped rhythmically against the wooden posts, a soft whisper that contrasted with the chaos running through Ethan's mind. He had spent the entire day preparing, tracing Michael's movements, reviewing his mother's files, and analyzing the USB drive. Every detail of Leonard Grayson's empire, every hint of betrayal, every encrypted secret, it all led to this night. And now, an anonymous message had summoned him here. "Ethan, if you value your life, meet me at the pier at midnight, alone." The air was cold, carrying a faint tang of salt and diesel from the boats moored nearby. Ethan moved cautiously, staying in the shadows, keeping every streetlight and crate in mind. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Trust your instincts. Fear is a guide, not a prison." He approached the end of the pier, every step deliberate, every sense alert. Suddenly, a shadow shifted near the warehouse at the pier. Ethan's pulse quickened. "Show yourself," he called, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. From the darkness emerged a figure, tall, lean, and wearing a hood that concealed most of his face. "Ethan Hale," the figure said, voice calm but dangerous. "You've done well to come this far." Ethan's grip tightened on the USB drive. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Friend or enemy?" The figure removed his hood, revealing a face that Ethan almost didn't recognize. It was Michael. Ethan froze. "Michael? Why? I thought you were working for Grayson." Michael's eyes were cold, but contained a strange flicker of something else. Regret, perhaps, or calculation. "I am," Michael admitted. "But Grayson isn't the only player here. There's more you don't know." Ethan's mind raced. More? More than Grayson? More than betrayal? Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your mother, she left more than evidence. She left a contingency plan, a series of moves that could take down Grayson completely. But it's dangerous. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and we both die." Ethan's stomach churned. "All of this is a game?" he whispered. "No," Michael said. "This is war." Before Ethan could respond, lights snapped on around the pier. Hidden figures emerged from the shadows, armed and alert. Grayson's men, all watching, all ready. Michael pulled a small device from his pocket. "These are Grayson's eyes and ears," he said. "They won't hesitate. If you make the wrong move, they'll kill you instantly." Ethan's chest tightened. He realized that every lesson his mother had prepared him for was being tested at once. Courage alone wasn't enough. He needed strategy, deception, and the ability to think faster than the enemy. Michael turned to him, voice urgent. "There's a boat at the end of the pier. It's rigged with tools, files, and access to Grayson's networks. You take the left path. It's exposed, but faster. Or the right path. Longer, but safer. Choose wisely. One wrong step, you die." Ethan froze, weighing the options. Left meant speed, but vulnerability. Right meant caution, but risked losing the element of surprise. He thought of his mother's journal. In every impossible choice, courage is knowing the right step, even when it scares you most. He made his decision. Left. Ethan sprinted down the left path. Grayson's men noticed immediately. Shouts rang out, footsteps pounded, and gunshots cracked the night air. Ethan dodged, rolled, and vaulted over crates, his heart hammering. Michael stayed behind, covering his back. "You have to move faster," Michael shouted. "They'll cut you off if you hesitate." Ethan reached the end of the pier, the boat rocking gently in the water. He climbed aboard, barely catching his breath, and found a hidden compartment containing laptops, files, and encrypted drives, everything his mother had left for this moment. As Ethan connected the laptops to access Grayson's networks, Michael appeared beside him, but his expression had changed. "Ethan," he said quietly, "Grayson isn't just a businessman. He's the tip of the iceberg. There's a council of powerful men, financial elites, and hidden operatives. All of them have been hunting your mother. She left this for you because she knew one day you'd be the only one who could challenge them." Ethan's mind reeled. Everything he had faced so far was only a fraction of the danger awaiting him. And now, with Grayson's men closing in, the pier became a battlefield, not just of survival, but of truth and legacy. Ethan gripped the USB drive and turned to Michael. "We finish this tonight," he said, voice firm. "Whatever it takes." Michael nodded, a flicker of respect crossing his face. "Then let's make it count. One step wrong, and we die." Behind them, the first wave of Grayson's men reached the edge of the pier. And in that moment, Ethan realized the war his mother warned him about has finally begun. The cold wind off the Pacific Ocean bit through Ethan's jacket as he crouched inside the small boat at the end of the pier. The water shimmered under the pale moonlight, tossing small waves against the hull. Every sound, the distant call of seagulls, the creak of wood, the soft lapping of water, seemed amplified, as though the night itself were holding its breath. Michael crouched beside him, his eyes scanning the shadows beyond the pier. "Ethan," he whispered, "they're closing in. Grayson isn't alone tonight. His men aren't just loyal. They're trained to eliminate anyone who stands in their way." Ethan gripped the USB drive, the weight of his mother's legacy in his hand. Every secret she had uncovered, every life she had risked, was now his responsibility. From the edge of the pier, movement stirred. Figures emerged from the shadows, armed and precise, closing in like predators. Grayson's men. Ethan's pulse raced. This was no longer about collecting evidence or uncovering secrets. It was survival. Michael pointed toward a cluster of crates at the far side of the pier. "We can use those for cover," he whispered. Ethan nodded. Adrenaline coursed through him. He leapt out of the boat, landing lightly behind the crates. Gunshots rang out from the edge of the pier, splashing into the water around him. The dance of light and shadow became a chaotic blur. Ethan's focus narrowed to one thing: outthink, outmaneuver, survive. Amidst the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows with purpose. Tall, commanding, and impossibly calm. Leonard Grayson himself stepped onto the pier, eyes scanning the scene with chilling calculation. "Ethan Hale," Grayson said, voice carrying across the water. "You've come far, but do you understand what you're playing with?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I understand enough," he said. "I understand that your empire is built on fear, lies, and betrayal. I also understand that my mother's courage will outlive you." Grayson's lips curved into a cold, slow smile. "Your mother? Courage?" She was naive. Brave, yes, but naive. You, on the other hand, are reckless. You've taken my resources, infiltrated my networks, and survived my men. I respect that. I admire it. But admiration doesn't mean you survive this. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Grayson wasn't just a villain. He was calculating, intelligent, and dangerous in ways Ethan had yet to comprehend. Grayson gestured, and Michael tensed. "This is the point where most people choose self-preservation," Grayson said. "They take the easy way out. They surrender. They hand me the evidence and disappear, never speaking a word." Ethan felt the weight of his mother's lessons. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act despite it. Every moment he had faced so far, betrayal, danger, deception, had been preparing him for this. He had a choice: surrender to Grayson and survive physically, but lose everything morally, or stand, fight, and risk death for the truth. Ethan's eyes met Michael's. "Whatever it takes," he whispered. Michael gave a small nod, respect mixed with fear, and stepped back, ready to assist. Grayson signaled, and more men emerged, converging on Ethan and Michael from all angles. The pier had become a maze of shadows, crates, and potential traps. Ethan ducked, rolled, and sprinted toward a stack of crates near the pier's edge, dragging Michael with him. Gunfire rang out, splinters flying from wood, the sound of bullets ricocheting against metal filling the night. The water below glimmered with reflections of chaos. Ethan's mind raced. He knew he couldn't outrun them. He had to outthink them. From his mother's notes, a strategy emerged: divide and conquer. Using the crates, shadows, and the pier's narrow passages, Ethan lured Grayson's men into tight spaces where they couldn't use their full strength. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of calculated movements. Ethan, using Michael as a distraction and the USB drive as bait, managed to isolate a small group of Grayson's men, locking them behind a heavy gate. Michael exhaled sharply. "You're good," he said, eyes wide. "You're better than I expected." Ethan nodded, but there was no time to celebrate. Grayson was still out there, calm, collected, and watching every move. And then, a chilling realization hit him. Grayson hadn't been testing his physical ability. He had been testing his morality, courage, and judgment. Ethan understood now. This was more than survival. It was a war of wits, strategy, and the willingness to make impossible choices under pressure. Amidst the chaos, a single file on the USB drive blinked, previously unnoticed. Ethan opened it and froze. It contained a recording, his mother's voice, calm but urgent, addressing Grayson directly. "Leonard Grayson, if you ever try to harm my son, know this. Every action you take will be exposed, and every secret you hold will come to light. Ethan Hale will inherit not just my courage, but the truth, and you will not escape it." Ethan felt the fire of purpose ignite in his chest. Grayson's arrogance had been his greatest weakness. He believed fear alone could control people. But he had underestimated the legacy of courage Ethan carried. The pier was silent now, only the distant sound of waves and the heavy breathing of two young men, Ethan and Michael. Grayson's silhouette remained in the shadows, his intentions unclear. But one thing was certain: Ethan had survived his first major confrontation. He had proven his courage, tested his morality, and outsmarted the enemy. But Grayson's empire was vast, powerful, and merciless. And somewhere in the shadows, more enemies waited. Ethan tightened his grip on the USB drive. The war was far from over, but now he knew he could fight, and he would fight. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting Los Angeles in pale gold and silver. The city's streets were quiet, but the air was electric, thick with the remnants of the pier confrontation. Ethan sat in the safe house, soaked with adrenaline and exhaustion. Every muscle ached, every nerve screamed. Michael leaned against the wall, silent, brooding, his eyes tracing the city skyline through the cracked blinds. Ethan turned to him. "We did it. We survived the pier. But what now?" Michael exhaled slowly. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Grayson isn't just dangerous. He's clever, ruthless, and always 10 steps ahead. We need help." Ethan frowned. "Help? From who?" Michael hesitated. Then he reached for a folder hidden beneath his jacket. Inside were photographs, letters, and encrypted messages. A single name was circled in red: Clara Whitman. Clara Whitman was not in Grayson's files. She was not in his public network. Yet Michael insisted she was the key to surviving and taking down Grayson. Ethan asked. "She was your mother's trusted confidant," Michael said. "She's been hiding, protecting critical pieces of evidence. And she's dangerous, the kind of dangerous that makes Grayson nervous." Ethan's heart raced. Another layer, another ally. But could he trust her? Michael shook his head. "You have to. There's no one else who can provide the resources we need to strike at Grayson directly." Ethan nodded slowly. He had learned the hard way. In this world, trust was fragile, but without it, survival was impossible. By mid-morning, Ethan and Michael drove through Los Angeles toward a secluded mansion in the hills, Clara's hideout. The roads twisted sharply, the city falling away into forested slopes and rocky terrain. Every second, Ethan felt the weight of danger. The mansion appeared suddenly, almost as if it had grown from the cliffs themselves. High walls, cameras, and motion sensors gave the impression of impenetrability. Yet Michael moved confidently, approaching a small hidden panel at the gate. The gate clicked open. Inside, the mansion was both opulent and functional, a blend of luxury and tactical preparation. Clara Whitman appeared in the doorway, sharp-eyed, her posture calm but commanding. "Ethan Hale," she said, voice strong yet carrying a subtle warmth. "You've done well to survive this far. But now, the real tests begin." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The woman's presence alone radiated intelligence, experience, and power. Inside, Clara explained the bigger picture. "Grayson is only one piece of the puzzle," she said. "His empire stretches beyond Los Angeles, beyond the United States. There are other men like him, financiers, politicians, manipulators who control resources, information, and life itself. Your mother knew this. She prepared for it. And now, so must you." Ethan absorbed the words, realizing how much larger the war was than he had imagined. His mother's fight had not been a simple battle against one man. It had been a calculated war against an entire network of corruption and power. Michael leaned in. "We'll need to move fast. Grayson will regroup after the pier. And he knows you survived. Expect retaliation." Ethan's fingers tightened around the USB drive. He had faced death before, but the stakes now were different. It was no longer just survival. It was strategy, morality, and the fight to carry his mother's legacy forward. Clara led them to a war room, walls lined with monitors, maps, and encrypted files. They pored over Grayson's known operations, identifying patterns, vulnerabilities, and key locations. "This," Clara said, pointing at a map of financial networks, "is where Grayson's control is strongest. Here," she indicated a hidden offshore account, "is where his power is weakest. If we strike there, we can destabilize his network without being detected immediately." Michael raised an eyebrow. "And what about the men still loyal to him in the city?" Clara smiled faintly. "We'll need a diversion, a calculated distraction to pull them away while we access his network." Ethan's mind raced. Every option carried risk. Every decision could be life or death. But one truth was undeniable. He was no longer just following his mother's plans. He was shaping them, making decisions, and taking responsibility for the consequences. As the team planned, Clara turned to Ethan. "You've survived betrayal, danger, and deception, but the hardest choice is yet to come. You will have the opportunity to confront Grayson directly, but doing so comes at a cost. Your safety, your anonymity, possibly even your life. And you must decide if you are ready for that." Ethan swallowed hard. Every fiber of his being screamed caution, but he remembered his mother's words. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act despite it." He nodded slowly. "I'm ready," he said. "Whatever it takes." Clara's eyes softened slightly. "Good. Then we move tonight." As night fell, the mansion became a hive of activity, monitors glowing, plans being finalized, encrypted communications sent. Outside, Los Angeles lay silent, unaware of the storm brewing in its shadows. Ethan felt a strange mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. Michael's betrayal, the pier confrontation, and Grayson's looming presence had all led to this moment. And Clara Whitman, the hidden ally his mother had trusted, was now guiding him toward the first major strike against Grayson's empire. Ethan clenched the USB drive. The war had escalated. The stakes were higher than ever. And in the quiet before the storm, he knew one truth. Tonight, the first real blow against Grayson would be delivered, and nothing would ever be the same. Night had fallen over Los Angeles, a velvet darkness punctuated by neon lights and the distant hum of traffic. Ethan stood on the balcony of Clara Whitman's mansion, the cool wind whipping against his face. Below, the city stretched like a living web of lights and shadows, completely unaware of the storm about to descend upon it. Michael leaned beside him, silent, tense, scanning the streets below for threats. Clara's team worked inside the mansion, finalizing encrypted connections, monitoring surveillance feeds, and coordinating the diversion that would allow Ethan to strike directly at Grayson's network. "This is it," Michael whispered. "Once you move, there's no turning back." Ethan clenched the USB drive in his hand. Every step he had taken, peer confrontations, betrayals, and secret allies, had led to this moment. And now, it was more than survival. It was retribution, justice, and the fight to finish what his mother started. Clara's plan was precise. The diversion trigger a series of false alarms and misdirections across Grayson's network in Los Angeles, drawing the majority of his men away. Infiltration. Use Michael and Ethan to access Grayson's central digital hub, located in an underground facility beneath one of his ostensibly legitimate corporations. Extraction. Secure the critical files exposing Grayson's empire and his hidden allies, ensuring the information reached independent journalists and federal authorities. Clara handed Ethan a map of the facility, marked with entrances, blind spots, and security rotations. "Timing is everything," she said. "One mistake, one delay, and Grayson will know you're coming before you even step inside." Ethan nodded. He had no room for fear, only focus. The streets were quiet as Ethan and Michael approached the facility, a monolithic building with the appearance of corporate normalcy. Cameras swept across every corner, security guards patrolled in precision, and the faint glow of surveillance monitors hinted at eyes everywhere. Michael glanced at him. "Remember, speed, stealth, and awareness. Don't engage unless necessary. We only have one shot at this." Ethan swallowed hard. He felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the same that had carried him through the pier and countless confrontations. He slipped inside the facility, shadowing the walls, his mother's voice echoing in his mind. "Courage isn't knowing you'll survive. It's knowing you might not and going forward anyway." As they descended into the underground hub, the air grew colder, heavier. The faint hum of computers and machinery surrounded them. Ethan's eyes scanned every corridor, every doorway, every shadow. Then a figure emerged, familiar, yet impossible. "Clara?" Ethan whispered. The woman stepped out from the darkness, but her eyes were cold, calculating. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said. "This was never just about Grayson." Ethan froze. "Wait, what do you mean?" Clara's fingers danced across a tablet, initiating a lockdown of the facility's internal systems. "You and Michael have been useful, yes, but this," she gestured to the facility, "is my move. I've been ensuring that Grayson's empire falls, on my terms." Michael stiffened. "You set us up?" he demanded. Clara's lips curved into a small, almost sad smile. "You were never supposed to get the glory, Ethan. You were supposed to survive long enough to see the pieces fall into place. But now," she tapped the tablet again, and alarms blared. The lockdown had begun. Ethan's mind raced. The path was blocked. Security had been rerouted. The facility was a maze, and Clara's betrayal, whether intentional or strategic, had put him and Michael in immediate danger. Gunshots echoed from distant corridors, and the sound of armored boots approached. Michael pulled Ethan to a side doorway. "We have to move, now." Ethan nodded, his pulse racing. Every instinct screamed fight or flight, but he knew this was also a test of morality. Could he protect the truth while staying alive? They darted through hallways, ducking behind server racks, crawling beneath catwalks, and using the shadows as shields. The facility had become a battlefield, a deadly chessboard where one misstep meant death. At the center of the facility, they found the critical server containing the files exposing Grayson. Ethan reached for it, but a secondary lock activated. The server required a simultaneous override from multiple terminals. Michael glanced at him. "We can't do it both. Someone has to stay here and keep the override active while the other runs with the drive. One choice. Either one of us dies." Ethan's mind spun. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a moral decision, a life or death choice, with no clear right answer. He remembered his mother's teachings. Sometimes courage means choosing the harder path, even if it puts you at risk. He turned to Michael. "You go. Take the drive. I'll hold this position." Michael shook his head. "No, Ethan. We go together." Ethan's jaw tightened. "This is my fight. You've survived too much already. Go, now." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful," he said, handing the drive over. "Don't lose yourself in this." Ethan bolted through the corridors with the USB drive in hand. Behind him, alarms blared, security descended, and Clara's betrayal lingered like a shadow. But he ran not just for survival. He ran for justice, for his mother, and for the truth. And somewhere in the facility, Grayson's empire began to tremble, unaware that a young man, armed with courage, strategy, and his mother's legacy, had just taken the first decisive step against it. Ethan knew one thing with certainty. The war was no longer a game. It was a reckoning. The underground facility reverberated with alarms, the shrill cries of security personnel, and the mechanical hum of the servers Ethan had just severed. The world outside seemed oblivious, yet every second within these walls was a matter of life and death. Ethan ran through the dimly lit corridors, the USB drive clutched tightly in his hands. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every footstep on the concrete floor a drumbeat of impending fate. Behind him, the sound of heavy boots echoed. Grayson's elite security force, now aware of the intrusion. The chase had become a test of speed, strategy, and sheer courage. Michael's words from earlier lingered in Ethan's mind. One of us stays, one of us goes. One choice defines the rest. Ethan had made his decision. He had stayed, allowing Michael to escape with the drive while he held the facility. It had been a moral choice as much as a strategic one, sacrifice for the greater good. But now, the consequence was immediate. Ethan rounded a corner and found himself face to face with two heavily armed guards. Time slowed. His instincts, honed through weeks of danger, took over. He dodged the first guard's lunge, rolled under a metal beam, and used a server rack as a shield. The second guard fired, and the bullet tore through the wall behind him. Ethan realized then that every choice he had made, every moment of courage, had led to this confrontation. He was alone, deep in Grayson's lair, with no backup. And yet, he felt a strange clarity. He had survived worse, and he would survive this. At the core of the facility, in Grayson's private office, Ethan finally came face to face with the man himself. Leonard Grayson stood tall, perfectly composed, a faint smirk on his face. "You've done well to make it here, Ethan," Grayson said. "Surprising even. But do you really think courage alone is enough to take me down?" Ethan held up the USB drive. "This isn't just courage," he said. "This is truth, and it's stronger than your fear, your lies, and your empire." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "Truth? Ha! Truth is subjective, and power is absolute. You've learned nothing about the world you've stepped into." Ethan stepped closer. "No, Grayson, I've learned everything I need to know. Power without conscience is weak, and you, despite everything, have forgotten one rule. Even empires fall." Grayson laughed, a low, chilling sound that echoed through the concrete office. "You're brave, I'll give you that, but bravery alone doesn't change the rules." Before Ethan could react, a shadow moved behind Grayson. Clara Whitman emerged from the darkness, her expression cold, calculating, but this time aligned with Ethan. "You underestimated her," Ethan realized aloud. Clara nodded. "She played both sides to this point, but the time has come. Grayson's network will crumble, and the tide has shifted." Grayson's smirk faltered. You were never supposed to, but it was too late." Clara had initiated a cascade of digital strikes, exploiting vulnerabilities Ethan had identified in Grayson's network. Screens around the office flashed red, alarms blared, and data began to transfer, exposing Grayson's empire to the outside world. Ethan felt a rush of triumph and relief. Grayson's control, for the first time, was slipping. Even as victory seemed within reach, danger remained. Grayson lunged, striking at Ethan with a heavy object, testing his reflexes. Ethan ducked, rolled, and countered, using the environment, server racks, cables, and the element of surprise, to his advantage. Every movement was a dance of life and death. Ethan realized that courage alone wasn't enough. Strategy, precision, and moral conviction were equally essential. Clara watched silently, providing tactical oversight, guiding Ethan through the chaos. Together, they fought not just for survival, but for justice, truth, and the legacy of Ethan's mother. With the digital strike complete, Grayson's empire began to collapse. Assets froze, allies panicked, and the media, alerted by the leaked files, began reporting on the unprecedented corruption. Grayson's control, the power that had seemed absolute, was crumbling in real time. Ethan felt a mixture of exhilaration and caution. The fight was far from over. Grayson was still dangerous, and his influence extended beyond what Ethan could see. But for the first time, the balance of power had shifted. Ethan, guided by courage, morality, and his mother's legacy, had gained the upper hand. Grayson, humiliated but defiant, retreated into the shadows of his crumbling empire. Ethan, standing amid the chaos of the facility, finally allowed himself to breathe for a moment. He looked at Clara and Michael, gratitude and resolve in his eyes. "This is just the beginning," he said. "But tonight, we changed the game. Tonight, we showed that courage, strategy, and truth can overcome even the darkest power." Outside, Los Angeles was quiet again, unaware of the storm that had raged beneath its streets. Inside, Ethan knew one truth. The reckoning had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The morning sun rose over Los Angeles, bathing the city in pale gold and silver. From above, the streets seemed peaceful, serene, a world untouched by the chaos that had raged just hours before. But beneath that calm surface, the city had changed. Power had shifted, secrets had been exposed, and one young man, Ethan Hale, had stepped from the shadows of his mother's legacy to claim his own place in a story much larger than himself. Ethan stood atop the rooftop of Clara Whitman's mansion, overlooking the city. The USB drive lay in his hand, a small but potent artifact of truth. He had survived betrayals, traps, near-death encounters, and moral dilemmas that could have broken anyone. Yet here he was, alive, determined, and stronger than ever. Michael joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it, Ethan. You actually did it." Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion mixed with triumph. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Grayson's empire is collapsing, but there's more out there. Others like him, others who think power gives them the right to control and destroy. My mother fought that war. Now it's mine." Michael nodded solemnly. "And you're ready." Far below, in his penthouse office, Leonard Grayson paced. The empire he had spent decades building was unraveling, exposed by Ethan's actions and Clara's unexpected allegiance. He was powerful, ruthless, and cunning, yet even he could not stop the dominoes from falling. A final message appeared on his secure devices. "This is not a threat. This is the truth. You will answer for everything." Grayson clenched his fists. Power had been his weapon, fear his shield, and deception his armor. But tonight, every tool had failed him. He realized, too late, that he had underestimated something he could never control: courage, conscience, and the legacy of those who came before him. In the following days, news outlets exploded with reports of Grayson's corruption, financial crimes, illegal operations, and hidden networks spanning multiple cities. Authorities began investigations, arrests were made, and the media labeled it the largest exposure of corruption in decades. Ethan's name remained hidden, his anonymity preserved by careful planning and Clara's network. Yet everywhere he turned, he felt the ripple effect of his actions. Lives had been changed, truth had been revealed, and a city once under shadow had glimpsed the light. Clara Whitman approached him one afternoon at the mansion. "You've done more than survive, Ethan," she said. "You've honored your mother's legacy. But remember, the world is full of people like Grayson, and the fight, it never really ends." Ethan looked out at the city, his expression resolute. "I know," he replied, "but courage is contagious. If one person stands, others will follow. That's how change begins." Ethan thought back to the journey that had brought him here. The day he saw his childhood photo in Grayson's mansion, the peer confrontation that tested every ounce of his bravery, the moral choices that forced him to risk his own life for the greater good, the betrayals, the alliances, and the countless moments when fear threatened to paralyze him. He realized the truth. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to act despite it. And legacy was not what was left behind in material wealth or reputation, but what one did with the life they were given. Ethan's mother had left him more than a mission. She had left him the tools to grow, the wisdom to survive, and the courage to fight. And he had honored that gift, not just for himself, but for every life touched by Grayson's corruption. Grayson, desperate and cornered, attempted one final strike, an attempt to regain control through an underground network he had not yet exposed. Ethan, anticipating the move through Clara's intelligence, intercepted him. The confrontation was silent at first. Two men, one young, one seasoned, standing in a shadowed corridor, eyes locked, tension palpable. Grayson sneered. "You think you've won? Empires like mine don't fall with a single blow." Ethan shook his head. "They do, when the people who uphold them choose truth over fear. You've ruled through lies. That ends now." Grayson lunged, but Ethan sidestepped, using a combination of agility, strategy, and intuition honed over weeks of survival. With a swift maneuver, Grayson was incapacitated, tied, and left to face the consequences of a network now dismantled by authorities and whistleblowers. It was not vengeance that filled Ethan's mind. It was justice, and the knowledge that courage, morality, and action could truly change the world. Moral of the story: Ethan stood outside the facility as authorities took Grayson into custody. The city was waking to a new day, brighter than it had been in decades. He reflected, "Courage is the most powerful weapon. Even in the face of overwhelming danger, standing for what is right matters. Legacy is what you leave through your actions, not just your words." Ethan had honored his mother's fight, continuing her mission with integrity. Truth can topple empires. Even the strongest, most feared individuals cannot withstand exposure when faced with courage and conscience. And most importantly, choices define us. The moments when fear grips us are also the moments when courage shapes our destiny. Ethan looked at the rising sun over Los Angeles, the city alive and vibrant once more. He addressed an imaginary audience, but his words felt universal. Courage isn't just for heroes and stories. It's for anyone willing to face their fears, make hard choices, and act with integrity. If you see injustice, if you see corruption, if you see someone using power to harm others, stand, act, speak. The world doesn't change on its own. Change begins with you. And remember, legacy isn't about wealth, fame, or glory. It's about what you do when no one is watching. Be brave, be relentless, and never underestimate the power of one person to change everything. Ethan returned to the mansion, finally allowing himself a moment of rest. Michael and Clara were there, allies forged through fire, betrayal, and trust. He looked at the city below, feeling both the weight of the journey and the satisfaction of its culmination. The war against Grayson was over, at least for now. But Ethan knew the fight for truth, justice, and courage was never truly over. And as the sun climbed higher over Los Angeles, a new chapter of Ethan Hale's life began. One of responsibility, legacy, and unwavering courage. If this story moved you, subscribe to Momentum Stories. See you in the next story.